Welcome everyone to our webinar today. My name is Jim Beretta and I'm a marketer through automation, robotics, and capital equipment industry, and have been working with Informa for a long time. I wanted to thank you for joining us today. So I want to also say that I have been with the show for a very long time and have been working with Informa for about 12 years. I also run the Robot Industry podcast. And this presentation today is in fact ahead of the ADM Toronto show. It runs from November 7th to 9th at the Toronto Congress Center. I wanted to welcome our companies today. An international company, Cavalier Tool and Manufacturing, has its headquarters in Windsor, a warehouse in Dearborn, Michigan, and facilities in Chennai and Lucknow in India. Since 1975, Cavalier Tool has been successfully servicing customers worldwide in the mold tooling industry. They became an industry innovator by advancing their employees, equipment, processes, services, and customer base. Boasting 250 employees and 2 plants totaling 85,000 square feet, capacity to build tools from 250 to 4,000 tons, Cavalier Tool can handle any project of any size. Circle 5 is a world-class supplier of injection molded solutions serving both the automotive and non-automotive industries. At Circle 5, they are committed to being on the cutting edge of technology and a leader in injection molding solutions for the 21st century. Circle 5 provides high-quality plastic injection molded solutions for various industries. They provide molds for the world's largest automotive tier 1s and for the biggest OEM brands globally. For over 36 years, they've been building a reputation of quality molds. Since 1982, Cimatron has provided toolmakers with an end-to-end solution for designing and manufacturing tools, including molds, dies, electrodes, as well as programming any CNC and EDM machines for molds, dies, plates, and discrete manufacturing. While Cimatron is at its most powerful when used as a fully integrated system, it also provides standalone solutions for faster quoting, tool design, electrode creation, and NC programming. And now I'd like to introduce our experts that we have today that have kindly given their time to me. Tim Galbraith is General Manager of Cavalier Tool. He is a big advocate of total cost of ownership, a skilled trades promoter. He's a social media enthusiast and certified dive master and volunteer with Canadian Association of Mold Makers. Salo Lam is president of Circle 5 and has worked there in various capacities for over 18 years. He's a big believer in team spirit, hiring well, marketing and branding, and creating a family atmosphere at his factory. Salo has achieved a recognition as Entrepreneur of the Year of 2023 by the Association of Chinese Entrepreneurs. He is also chair of CAM. And last but not least, John Thompson is proud to provide technical solutions that bring a competitive advantage to his customers. The one thing that brings satisfaction to him is a sense of contribution. It may be volunteering in the community, reaching out to help the less fortunate, and serving friends' needs, or many acts of kindness. So I want to welcome everyone to the webinar today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And if I got anything wrong, John, are you on the board of CAM as well? I didn't clue into that.
That is correct. Thanks, Jim.
Great. So I want to start with the first question for today. What are some of the big trends that you're seeing in the industry, and how has the mold and manufacturing landscape changed? And John, why don't we start with you on this?
Sure. My perspective is a little different than the other two respected gentlemen on the panel today, but coming from the software side of the business, some of the trends in the industry, many hear about 3D printing with regards to plastic parts, but there's a number of companies and customers 3D printing metal inserts for molding. And along with the 3D printing concept is the catchphrase word conformal coolant, which is non-linear coolant lines that basically follow the 3D shape of the part to be formed. That's an ongoing progressive idea that's being adapted more and more. I believe also the integration with companies' ERPs, people's software that they use for designing and manufacturing are are being connected in with those systems. More and more automation is being implemented from software to hardware as the weeks go by, and tools for repetitive tasks, and the software getting to the point of learning operations and tasks so that repetitive and nuanced things are less and less, and we spend more time doing the nitty-gritty versus the mundane.
Yeah, John, it's so interesting to seeing kind of the mesh of hardware to software through software, and thank you for that. Tim, I'll get you on this question for next up. What are some of the big trends you're seeing in the industry?
Much like John, it's software and hardware driven. Obviously, I'm going to touch on it because you brought it up. ERP is a big thing. Organization and data are what's driving the decisions of the future. And anybody who doesn't pay attention to the history is doomed to repeat it. Automation is a big deal. And I picked up a line from Dave Tomac of Eden Tool last week at an event I was at. Mold making is the relentless pursuit of technology. And if you're not looking to incorporate technology into your game, you're not going to be in the landscape in the future. Additive manufacturing, of course, we've survived in this industry of subtractive manufacturing for eons. We take big blocks of steel, we get rid of the parts that we don't want, and what's left is the good part. Can you imagine starting with nothing and only building the good part? And that's something that hopefully I'll be around to see at some point, but those are some of the big trends. And not last but not least, I would probably say AI. AI is creeping in as a bigger and bigger part of our industry. Again, the future will hold, and John's probably more up speed on that. AI will be part of design in the future. It'll be part of manufacturing in the future. We're in its infancy. Those are the disruptors I see on the horizon.
Thank you. Great. And these are great answers, and it's such an exciting industry. So I'm happy to hear, Salo, what you have on what are some of the big trends that you're seeing.
Okay, thank you, Jim. To tack on what John and Tim already said, with all this advancement in technology, hardware, and software, what we're seeing are the parts that we're molding are going to be ever more creative in terms of geometry and shape. You're seeing a lot more thin wall type of applications. You are seeing new types of material that are more recycle friendly, but however durable. You're seeing these elements that are just going to push the boundaries on what can be molded in plastic. No different than when plastic injection mold became in the forefront in the 1960s. I think we're going to enter a new generation of sustainable plastics, also with thin wall applications, and that's the outcome, the product that will come from these innovations and technology that John and Tim mentioned.
No, great answers. Thank you very much, everyone. Whoops, I'll get my mouse all set up here. So that some good points. And so especially around, like you say, thin wall, new materials, AI, how do we remain agile and creative? And Tim, I'll put you up for this question.
I think it's a corporate DNA that's required. It's got to be part of what you do every day. If you are one of the guys that sits back and waits to see what everybody else is doing and adapts that technology, sure, that's fine. You may survive, but if you're not on the forefront, you're not going to be leading the industry. And it has to be part of your corporate DNA. It's not an afterthought. So if you're not looking at it, you're not going to be part of it.
And Salo, that goes to kind of some of the conversations we had in prep for this conversation, right? About creating staff and attracting staff. And we're going to talk about that, but how do we remain agile and creative from a from a personnel standpoint?
Creative personnel. I think that use the word factory. I think it conjures up for many people in our demographics, it conjures up a dark, a job that is a dead end and has no opportunities. And I think that we need to change our branding, our marketing of our industry of skilled trades and advanced manufacturing, and take a page out of Elon Musk's book to say building rockets or building stuff is cool again. And I think that's what we do, and we focus on those ideas. You couple that with your corporate DNA, as what Tim suggested, and then you kind of just be genuine to yourself, and you project that this genuine experience, and that is how you're going to attract the best and brightest, so that they don't go to Amazon or they don't go to somebody else and so forth. So those are some elements that I think that keeps you agile and creative.
Yeah, and I think it's so important that we keep people in our geographic areas. That's something we don't talk about very much, for sure. John, what's your thoughts on how are we remaining agile and creative?
As the third person to answer the same question, I guess my answer or thoughts will be fairly brief, but to add to those, perhaps the idea of listening to the users that are on the first tier level, those creating and designing. Often in larger companies, for example, you have managers that make the decisions for these folks, but they always have good ideas, and they obviously want to make their jobs easier. And if we can, take across the board a listening ear, I think that's a great advantage to all the points that the other guys have already made.
Great, thank you very much, panel, for those questions. My next question is, how has research and development changed? And Salo, I think you're up for this one.
Thank you. Well, we're blessed to be in Ontario, all three of us, so we can work with the Ontario and the federal government on scientific research experimental development program. But furthermore to that, again, with advancing technologies of 3D printing, AI, we work with vendors all across these technology partners that we have, and always just inquire and keep pulse with them. And very oftentimes, companies like Cambrio, Cimatron will have seminars to explain to them what are their latest developments. So I believe just having a pulse on the industry is also very important, and trade shows like ADM to be involved and understand what the latest technologies are, what other people are doing, and how you can collaborate with others on how to continue to have Ontario as a center of excellence for advanced manufacturing. So what has changed? I believe more collaboration. I think it's not of just individual silos with companies like, individual companies, but a lot more sharing of information and wares to achieve a common goal for all.
And I think too, Salo, even being members of the association, right, and even working with your competitors as closely as you are at CAM, it's an important part of that R&D cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of CAM, I think it's in its initial inceptions, a lot of people were very wary about trade secrets and so forth. But I believe that just as attrition took place, I think we're all rooting for each other to be successful as opposed to rooting against each other. And I think that's what makes CAMs very special. And that's, again, I think that's what's changed in this research and development type of environment.
And it's a pretty small community, right? Like when you think of not only Windsor being a small community or CAM being a small community, but you're often trading employees and you're often learning from other people. So I think that's very, very cool.
Thank you.
John, I'll take this question for you about how has research and development changed?
Well, to kind of add on to Salo's concept of everybody in a region kind of cooperating with one another, I've seen over the years various regions around the world, and I won't mention them, but how they combine efforts and basically learn from one another for the benefit of the whole region or community. So that's an awesome thing to see. But from a perspective of software and even hardware, systems over the years have been developed to be far more efficient to turn on a dime. By that, I mean, years ago, for example, I don't want to get too deep into it, but coding for software. If one person did some coding and a second person was to take a look at that coding, it would take weeks, maybe even months to figure out what they were trying to do for the purpose of improving it. All right, so now we use, for a technical word, object store database style programming or coding so that things can be changed rather quickly and adapt to market or user needs. Additionally, quality control has certainly increased in persons, and the benefit there is that with each release of software and or hardware that implements software, the chances for ramp up because of bugs or slow down in speed are avoided by having that extra quality control factor built into the processes.
Thanks for that, Tim. So we're talking a lot about software, Tim, and that's your jam. So how have you seen kind of research and development change, and how does some of the things that you're doing meld into that?
Great points made by my members of the group here. And I think one that he's emphasizing is the change from the solitary mold shop to the cooperative venture of the industry, and CAM being a great part of that, as well as on industry trade associations. One thing we need to bear in mind when we think about the mold making industry, that R&D for a production facility that makes brake pads or garbage cans is one thing, but because we're a discrete industry, every product that we make starts from scratch from design. We are challenged by our tiers and the OEMs to come up with better ways of building parts, and Salo referred to it earlier with thin wall. There's all kinds of challenges in front of us, consolidating an assembly into a single part, which means we've got to make complex molds with lots of different types of action in that. So we live R&D every day, and I don't think sometimes we understand how important it is to us. And as time goes by, we're lucky enough to have the SHRED program in Ontario, again, as Salo had mentioned, to help support us to do this, because it gives us a safety net for, frankly, for failure. And we can try, and if we don't get there, we try again, and there's some help there.
Yeah, I don't think we talk enough about failure in the industry, because in a lot of cases, every project that we take on has a bit of risk, especially we're putting in R&D. So I think that'll be another webinar for another time, though. What are some of the best practices in our industry for attracting, retaining talent? And John, I think you're up for this question now.
Certainly, you're probably asking the least qualified for the question, but because the other two gentlemen are the ones that have the best interest in retaining talent. But interestingly, though, for my experience, or from my experience rather, I visit an awful lot of shops across North America, Europe, and Asia, and it becomes very clear to me those shops where everybody's happy, and those where it's just a job. And if it's just a job, then you can go elsewhere and hopefully find greener pastures. But it seems the age-old additive of investing in your employees, whether it's training or giving them higher responsibilities to increase their self-worth. No doubt, and this kind of overlaps a bit of the topic previous to this one, there's concern that this newfound knowledge could promote, looking for greener pastures elsewhere in your region or somewhere else around the world, wherever it may be. But this leads to the concept of what gets talked about quite a bit over the past few years, especially with the advent of the health situation and people working at home, but balance of work-life culture, and a company that has management styles that kind of cultivate that, I think are very, very important. That's what I see now. I'll add to this without taking too much time, but it's interesting that I get a handful of companies where after I visit with them, they will ask me what they think of their workforce and what the demeanor is. And I think as a company owner or a manager in a company, if you have people coming in from the outside, sitting with your people for a week or a day or 2 days, it would be a good idea to tap into their insight and what their pulse might be on your organization. But anyways, some free advice, I suppose.
No, that's great. Thank you very much for those insights. And Salo, I'm gonna, because we had a little long chat about some of the work that you've done, I'll have you up for this question.
Thank you. Tim mentioned earlier about the DNA of the company, and what does that mean for us to expand on that idea? Is a good best practice is to establish the core values of your company. It's something an exercise I did in 2019. And it really defined, and we put in words, what really makes Circle 5. And so we have established and identified the core values. And it wasn't just done myself in a vacuum. It was then done with a group of members, new and seasoned at Circle, where we reviewed and asked ourselves and observed what type of activities that really explain what we're about. And so I think identifying what your core values of your company was the keystone that permeates from them afterwards. And once we have that core value, we can define purpose And then, of course, and I'll share some little tidbits for Circle right now, is that for 2023, we want to label ourselves as a learning company, not an advanced manufacturing company, or a tool shop for that matter. And use an example: if you call yourself a tool shop, all right, which is fine, it's actually fine. You actually put a subconscious limit on your ability, because you can be the best tool shop in the world. However, if you're a learning company, there's no such thing as the best learner in the world. There's no upper boundary in terms of what your company and your individual or groups and teams can achieve. And that is a mindset that's so subtle, but yet very impactful. So that's an example of what ideas, and you inspire people and you give them purpose, and that's how you attract and retain talent.
Very cool. Thank you very much for that answer. And Tim, last but not least, on this question about some of the best practices to attrain and retain talent. And of course, you see it from a different lens. So I'd be interested to hear some of your thoughts.
It's pretty tough to do much other than what's been said, but the core requirement is to create an atmosphere in a company, and core values of that company, like Salo referred to, where people want to be part of it. And if you make it an enjoyable experience, if you bring them in and make them part of the team, if there is more of the expectation than just putting in 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day of work, you develop the corporate DNA, you develop the conscience of the company and you become desirable. And that starts right from the rewards, the barbecues that you have, the courses that you send people to, and to talk a little bit what John said. Yes, you educate your people and you risk losing them, but they're still in the industry and it's good for everybody, but it gives you a good reputation. So it's about being focused. And is the focus shifting? Sure, we all talk about Gen X, Gen Z, and the things that we have to do. It's a learning curve, and you're constantly looking for the next thing to do to make your people happy. The working from home stuff. You just have to be constantly pivoting to make sure that you're doing what's best for your workforce and keeping them happy.
Thanks, John. Did I get you for this question or not?
You did. But I was just I was the first person to jump in without the least amount of experience, but I will at least say that I feel like I'm part of a choir, because I know Salo and Tim and their organizations, and they do a bang up job of working hard for retention and employee satisfaction. So kudos. So
also, then I'm gonna get you, Tim, to start in on this one too, if you don't mind. And we kind of talked a little bit about kind of the political nature of the molding industry, and educating not only our own internal people, but also external stakeholders like government and municipalities about how important the industry is. So, Tim, I'll start with you on this.
Something that's near and dear to my heart. You hit on 2 topics, politics and education, that are kind of key things for me. First of all, we need to have an understanding that the average consumer will never, ever touch a mold in their life. They don't understand what they are, and they don't realize what it is. As we often say, we're the industry that makes things that make things. So they will come in contact with garbage pails, car parts, computer monitors. Their plastic parts that are molded are part of their everyday life. They just don't understand what a mold is. So they don't understand how integral it is. And our job is to sing loud and clear how important we are to the country, both as an employer, as an opportunity for advancement in skilled trades, as well as we need to bring the politicians and the governments into line as well of what we got to offer. And I think that through organizations like CAM and the other industry leadership, we're doing a pretty good job. We're really making our voice heard. And I can tell you, I know that we're making our voice heard because they're calling and asking questions now, where 15 years ago, we couldn't get, I was part of CAM and trying to get an appointment with an MP. They wouldn't even have the time to see us. And now we're being called and asked for our opinions. So we're making a difference, and we got to keep that up.
That's great. Salo, your thoughts on the politics and education of the mold industry?
I can't speak too much about the politics. I just don't have enough outreach on that. But with respect to education, I'm just glad to hear that guidance counselors are now, promoting skilled trades also as a profession. I can speak from my experience was that back then it was more about push the university first, and then it would be college or trades and so forth. And I'm very happy to see the sentiment change in terms of promoting it equally as post-secondary education like university. I think that with government, the only thing I can speak about government is that with the Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Trade, I mean that there's better alignment with them and also with the schools, Ministry of Education, to kind of, again, just promote and help us rebrand what factory work is, but instead advanced manufacturing. I believe we're in the right track. We have plenty of work left to do. And I also believe that in North America, we're at the very cusp of a manufacturing revolution. And I think that no better time than right now to achieve that. And again, I think that education, we're moving in the right direction on promoting skilled trades. So I am very, very happy. And I think furthermore to that, our industry, many firms in Windsor specifically host job fair days. We open our doors to young adults or even teenagers to give them a better understanding of what it's like. That it is no longer like your grandfather's factory. That is a bright, clean, technologically advanced space. And as Tim said, even the phrase, we're in the industry of making things that make things. How cool is that? And again, it comes down to branding, about branding and promoting our trade. And that is, I think we're in the right direction, but I think we could do a better job. And again, it's an exciting time to be in this space right now.
Thank you for that. And John, some of your thoughts, being part of the industry and part of CAM, what are some of the politics and education issues that are happening within the mold industry?
Boy, I will basically be echoing the other fellows' comments for the most part, but there needs to be an increased appreciation for careers that are in this segment, without a doubt. As I think Tim alluded to a little bit, the guidance counselors at high schools for many years didn't even have this industry really on their radar, and I think that's a real shame. That combining with even skilled trades like plumbing and electrician and HVAC folks and all that sort of business, there needs to be an emphasis on these styles of career paths. And no doubt for anybody listening that's going to be, looking at a career, this sort of a career is going to result in a remuneration or a salary that, relative to the rest of careers out there, will be quite handy to your finances. Let's put it that way.
John, I totally agree with you. And I think guidance counselors are one of these little niche groups that we should all be absolutely bringing into our factories and touring them around and absolutely educating them a little bit about the exciting part of being in the advanced manufacturing industry, because they're years ahead and it's very cool and you can pretty much work anywhere and do anything.
You answered the question as well as we did. Thanks.
And so the word sustainability has kind of come up a little bit in our conversation today. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. What are some of your thoughts on sustainability?
Sustainability can take in so many angles. First thing I mentioned about the how our industry is changing. Sustainability, again, I think material suppliers are always looking at more eco-friendly type of engineered resins that can still meet the application, however, be friendly to environment. That's one level of sustainability. Sustainability within our own operations. I believe we're looking at different other ways of just being very mindful on waste and in terms of our impact into our environments. I do believe it's just happy so that both Tim and I, we were in the metal industry, so we recycle a lot of our waste, which is very handy, but also the fluids and also the type of other elements that we use to process metal. I believe they're all more eco-friendly and so forth. So these are the other items we're talking about. And if you want to talk about sustainability in terms of our industry as its viability and longevity, I think all the questions that led up to this question are leading to that. I mean, there's advancement of technology. There's, I think, the advanced manufacturers today, tool makers like myself and Tim. I believe that marketing and HR are the biggest growth in our operations relative to the past, and that's going to keep us sustainable for introducing and also having the leaders of tomorrow enter our industry and to be leaders like we are today.
Thank you for that, John. Let's have you talk a little bit about sustainability too.
I mean, from the software perspective, I don't have much to offer on the topic, but again, from my experience of visiting numerous hundreds and thousands of shops over the years, I actually believe that we're in pretty good hands already. For years, mold makers have worked to maximize raw materials and consumables, and that I don't think will really change. There will be new technologies emerging, but I can count on this industry to adapt early. And the thing is that cost margins have forced this upon mold makers for years already. So they're already accustomed to working as efficiently as possible. So they will no doubt take any opportunities that come along with regards to advancements in technology. So that I believe is not going to be an issue. Swinging back to the education, I think the focus that we need to pour our energy into is educating the next decade or a couple of decades of personalities to fill the roles of those guys that are in their late 50s that won't be around for in 10 years time. So I think that's an important aspect.
Thank you for that. And last but not least on this question, Tim, what are some of your thoughts on sustainability?
I think we've covered a lot of the green leaning sustainability, and John's spot on. COGS and competitiveness require us to minimize our energy footprint. We have lights that turn on and off as you walk through the shop, variable speed compressors. Everything we do is about conservation here. It has to be, because it goes to the bottom line. Our industry is another story, and sustainability in our industry will be there. It's just a matter of whether you're on board or not, because lightweighting of vehicles is going to, and as Salo mentioned, development in resins is going to require molds more complex and larger and doing neater things. But we've got to make sure that we're ahead of the curve technologically. And the absolute key to that is feeding people. And John talked about it. And this circles back to our education point earlier. We need smart people. And we go back to when I was a kid, I think it was around Noah's Ark days or something. When you were streamed, you were either smart and you got to go to university, or you weren't and you went to shop and trades. We need the smartest people in the business working in the manufacturing industry. This is about complex systems. This is about data analysis. This is about automation. I can't stress enough that we need to be feeding these people. And I'm going to do a blatant plug for Manufacturing Day, because I can tell you in Windsor, we do a great job of Manufacturing Day down here. And it's a chance to expose our next generation of skilled trades to what we do here, a peek behind the curtain, and see how cool it is to be in the manufacturing industry.
And thank you for that plug, because I wasn't going to do it, but and I on going back to sustainability, I know my kids would like to work for a company that is sustainable from all these different perspectives, and I think it's a good conversation to have. I wanted to thank everyone on the panel, and to Salo, John, and to Tim, thanks for taking your time today. We're going to open up the floor to some questions, and I'm going to jockey the questions as well. Okay, so we'll take our first question. First question is about supply chain. What's happening to supply chain and deliveries of complex molds? And Salo, you're up first for this question.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Thank you. Again, we're in the generation of everything now. And what that means is that our lead times are getting shorter and shorter. But at the end of the day, it still takes a certain amount of time to cut steel and to manipulate steel to these very precise dimensions. And how's that happening now? That's happening with a lot of integration with your software suppliers up front for design, with mold flows at the beginning, and also with your outsourced suppliers that you have as you're doing the build. Everything's a lot more integrated, and that is one of the drivers. And with that being said, integration with your partners outside of your four walls is what's happening. That's driving lead times down to remain competitive, and also it's keeping us on our toes.
Thank you for that. Anybody else want to jump into that question?
Sure, I'll take a stab at it. Deliveries, first of all, we have to understand that quality is now assumed. There is no more I'm better quality than you. Quality is assumed to be a given that has to be part of the equation. And Salo's right. The next thing is the I want it now. And the better you integrate with your customers, with your supply chain partners, both prior and after, to work with them so that when tooling kicks off, the more condensed the delivery time is. The better the data is when you start your job, the faster you get the tool built. The more feasibilities that are done ahead of time, and mold flows, as he refers to, answers a lot of questions that takes away from build time and puts the molds in the customer's hand fastest. Now, that being said, that adds up to cost of building, because you're investing a lot of non-build time to launch programs properly. But again, if you're looking at the cost per part of output of a molding machine, and you can justify that, people will spend the money to buy the tooling that you have. So there's a number of things that figure into it, not just delivery, but to get fast deliveries, you've got to have a good product.
This next question is for John. What is happening with software? Is software becoming easier to use? Is it harder? Is it more interlaced?
I guess that's the question for whomever learns it. We attempt to make the software easier to learn. Certainly, there's lots of efforts put into to make it, I'll say, modern, i.e., as though you're using an app on your phone, or Microsoft Word or Microsoft Outlook. Mind you, those are fairly simple tasks that you're doing in applications such as I just mentioned, but at the very least, there's a concerted effort to simplify the UI, and also to minimize the amount of user input that's required. And that's kind of goes back to a little bit earlier in our conversation about the software learning what you are doing and predicting ahead of time, rather than asking for that input every time. So there's does that kind of answer the question there?
No, I think it's just done well. Here's our last questions just coming up here. Are customers acting differently due to supply chain? Are they ordering their mold and mold tools earlier in the cycle, or have their behaviors changed at all? And so, Tim, I'll go to you first for this question.
Well, I think the answer will be different depending on whether you ask me or my customers, because they think they're ahead of the curve, and we find them behind the curve. Is it changed? It's constantly changing, and as more responsibility gets pushed down the supply chain, it ends up on our laps. We're now part of part design. We're now part of sizing of presses. We're now part of tonnage of presses. We're now part of selecting things like that we weren't part of before. So it's changing. Yes, we're accepting more responsibility, and we have to be able to accept more responsibility. We've got to be better partners, because it should not be, and it is not just a commodity buy sell thing. And if it is, we're going to lose.
Salo, any comments on that question?
Yeah. It goes without saying that baby boomers were a large part of the skilled trade workforce for obviously for decades, and we know that the baby boomers are now aging out. And so from that perspective, customers, just like at the manufacturing space, there's a change in evolution. So just to further what Tim mentioned is that oftentimes your customer, your touch point on the other end would be somebody with a skilled trade background that understand the nuances of designing and building an injection mold. And now you're seeing a set of individuals with a different kind of educational background that may not necessarily have that. And so there are changes with respect to that. But again, it's those who can articulate and understand the gaps the best are the ones going to lead to success. I mean, of course, it goes without saying it could get very frustrating, but understanding the landscape and who your touch points are on the other end could make the difference. And again, furthermore, to the previous question, I mean, you're seeing a lot more integration, again, because the lead times are being compressed. But it was, I would say, dare I say, it was a little easier in the past because your counterpart was also coming from a skilled trades background, and now it's not so much.
That's great. And thank you, panel. And if we didn't get a chance to get to your question today, what we will do is we'll collect the questions and we'll distribute them out to the panel, that they can answer you directly. So thanks again for the panel. I'm going to leave this information up on the screen for a few seconds so that people can take a picture with their smartphone or maybe get in touch with you directly if they do happen to have a question that they can't wait for. So I wanted to thank the panel again, and thank you all for contributing. I wanted to talk a minute about ADM Toronto show, which is happening November 7 to 9. It's at the TCC by the airport. It's got 5 manufacturing events. We'll have 4,000 attendees, 300 exhibitors, and our show hours are 10 to 4, 10 to 4, and then 10 to 3. We have lots of, this is the show that has 5 different shows under one roof with one ticket. And we also have, new to this show this year, an EV tech area to talk a little bit about EV and what's happening in Ontario. We have a bunch of educational sessions and speakers to the industry. So please come by the show, and I will be there. We have lots of different partners as well as CAM. And I wanted to also reach out to thank CAM, Canadian Association of Mold Makers, and especially Nicole Vlanich. Appreciate your introductions and your support in helping making this webinar possible. And if you do have any questions about the show or about the Robot Industry Podcast, which I happen to manage, please reach out to me. My information's there on the last slide. So thanks, everyone, and hope to see you at the show.